Angel Reese swings. Her arm connects with Caitlin Clark's head. The crowd freezes. The refs huddle. The arena goes silent in that specific way arenas go silent when everyone present understands simultaneously that something significant just happened and nobody yet knows what comes next. This is that story, the full story, from the beginning, how it started. The rivalry between Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese did not begin on a WNBA court. It began under the brightest lights in college basketball, with a national championship game and a gesture that 30 million people watched and immediately started arguing about. 2023 NCAA Championship Final, LSU versus Iowa. Angel Reese's LSU team was winning and winning decisively. In the closing seconds, Reese pointed at her ring finger directly at Clark, a gesture Clark had made earlier in the tournament toward her own opponents. The reference was deliberate. The irony was deliberate. The image of Reese pointing at her ring finger while Clark watched from the floor became one of the most viral moments in the history of college sports, generating more engagement than almost any previous NCAA moment across either gender. What followed was two fan-base ecosystems building simultaneously, one around Clark, one around Reese, that were not simply rivalrous in the sporting sense, but represented something broader about the conversation around women's basketball, about which players got attention and why, about who was celebrated and who was scrutinized. That conversation was already fully formed and fully heated by the time both players were drafted in 2024. Clark went first overall to Indiana. Reese went 7th to Chicago. The geography placed them in the same division. Every time these two teams appeared on a schedule together, the basketball world prepared for something that transcended the regular season. Ticket prices for Fever Sky games ran higher than most WNBA playoff contests. Television ratings for their matchups outperformed any comparable regular season women's basketball broadcast in decades. Social media began buzzing hours before tip-off. Sports shows structured entire programming blocks around their encounters. The WNBA understood what it had and made sure the cameras were ready. This was the context when they met in the game that produced the moment everyone is still discussing. The game begins. Clark takes over. When the Indiana Fever and Chicago Sky took the court, Clark came out aggressive in the specific way she operates when she has decided a game is hers from the first possession. No feeling out period, no gradual acceleration. First touch and she was attacking downhill, slicing through the Sky's defensive structure and finishing at the rim with a confidence that did not look like a second-year player finding her feet. Layups off the glass, quick bursts in transition. Her energy told you immediately what kind of night this was going to be. 7 points in the first quarter, but the number understated the impact. She was everywhere, active in passing lanes, disrupting rhythm on the defensive end, challenging shots that the Sky's guards had not anticipated being challenged. The critics who had spent the previous season questioning her defense were getting a direct response delivered in real time without a word being said. The moment that crystallized her first quarter dominance, Aaliyah Boston plants a strong on-ball screen at the top of the key. Just a sliver of daylight opens up. Clark rises into it, releases her trademark jumper, smooth, high arc, the specific trajectory that makes it look like physics is cooperating, and the net moves before the defender has even begun to react. One motion, one breath, 2 points on the board. Then she shifted gears. Instead of hunting her own shot on every possession, she started orchestrating. The Fever's offense began to flow through her decisions, reading help defenders before they committed, kicking out to open teammates through tight windows, threading passes that arrived exactly where they needed to arrive. The pace of the game was hers to dictate. The spacing was hers to manage. She was controlling the game, and the Sky's coaching staff could see it happening and had no immediate answer for it. By the end of the first half, the Fever had established a lead that felt more commanding than the raw number suggested, because the margin reflected not a burst of shooting luck, but a systematic dismantling of Chicago's defensive coherence at the hands of one player. The swing, late in the third quarter, scored tight enough that every possession carried weight. Clark drove hard to the basket, head down, full speed, attacking the lane the way she attacks when she has decided the situation calls for a finish rather than a pass. She had made this drive several times in the game already. The Sky's defense had been adjusting to it, rotating help earlier, contesting the path to the rim with bodies. From behind, Angel Reese rotated over. She swung her arm, the stated intention being to block the shot or at least contest it. What her arm connected with was not the ball. It was not Clark's shoulder or her torso or any of the incidental physical contact that happens constantly in the flow of a basketball game. Her arm connected with Clark's head. Not a graze, not an ambiguous brush. Clear contact with a player's head, at speed, with force. The sound made people gasp. That specific wrong sound. The sound that made the crowd go quiet before anyone had processed what they were watching. The whistle came immediately. Personal foul on Reese. Common foul was the initial call. The officials looked at each other, then they went to the monitor. The arena went into that particular silence where everyone is staring at the replay screen on the Jumbotron and running their own analysis simultaneously. The angle loaded, the arm extended. The contact was visible from every angle the broadcast had. There was not much room for interpretive generosity in what the footage showed. The call was upgraded to a flagrant one. Now consider this from a basketball standpoint. Angel Reese averaged 13.5 rebounds per game that season and had secured 13 in this game alone. She is one of the most precise interior players in the league, a player whose entire game is built on reading trajectories and arriving at the right position at the right time. A player with that level of timing and spatial awareness does not miss the ball by the margin the footage showed unless something other than an innocent misjudgment was occurring. That argument moved through the building in real time and detonated online within seconds of the footage being shared. Was it deliberate? Was it frustration expressing itself physically? Was it a calculated message about what playing against the Sky was going to feel like? The debate has never been definitively settled and probably cannot be. What was settled immediately and permanently by the video review was that the contact happened, that it was severe enough to be classified as a flagrant foul, and that the officials were going to call it accordingly. Online, the clip spread faster than almost any single moment in WNBA history. Sports shows had their next headline before the game's fourth quarter had begun. The rivalry that had been boiling since the 2023 championship game had just produced its most explosive moment yet. The response. Here is what distinguishes Caitlin Clark from players who get defined by moments like this rather than defining them. After the review, after the flagrant call, after the arena buzzing with argument and the online ecosystem detonating with takes, Clark walked to the free throw line. She bounced the ball the prescribed number of times. She shot the first free throw and made it. She shot the second free throw and made it. The fever went up 65-62. She turned and ran back on defense. No dramatic reaction. No extended response to what had happened to her. No performance of grievance for the cameras. Just the free throws, made cleanly, and back to work. But here is what happened over the next 5 minutes of game time. Clark was activated, not destabilized. Activated. She scored 9 points in the closing 5 minutes of the third quarter alone. The aggression in her game ticked upward noticeably. The pace of her decisions quickened. Every possession felt intentional in a way that was slightly different from the intentionality of the first 3 quarters, as if the moment had compressed something in her competitive circuitry and released it in the direction the game needed it to go. She attacked gaps harder. She pulled up with greater confidence. She demanded the ball in the possessions that mattered. Her teammates fed off the energy. The bench responded. The arena responded. What the flagrant foul had been designed to do, if it was designed to do anything, was produce the opposite result. That is leadership under pressure. That is the specific quality that separates the players who get defined by adversity from the players who use adversity as fuel. The moment lit something in Clark, and she directed it back into the game in the form of 9 points in 5 minutes. Reese's night gets complicated. While Clark was pouring in points at the other end, Angel Reese's night was developing its own complications. She picked up her 4th personal foul and was sent to the bench. Head coach Teresa Weatherspoon trusted her enough to put her back in at the start of the fourth quarter. The leash did not last long. Reese picked up her fifth foul early in the final period and had to sit again, watching from the bench as the game continued to develop without her physical presence inside. With approximately 5.5 minutes remaining, she returned. Nothing about her approach had softened. She remained physical, assertive, unwilling to adjust her edge downward to accommodate foul trouble. Some observers saw that as competitive integrity, the refusal to become a lesser version of herself when the game needed her most. Others saw it as the stubbornness of a player who had already paid a significant cost for her approach and was electing to continue paying it. Either way, the polarization around Reese that the flagrant foul had amplified was not being diminished by her return. If anything, every possession she played in those final minutes deepened the division in how she was being discussed. Fierce competitor or player who crosses lines. And she seemed to understand that division and have made her peace with being its subject. The defensive statement. Late in the game, with the Fever protecting their lead and the Sky pushing to close the gap, Caitlin Clark made the play that answered the one sustained criticism that had followed her through her rookie season. The question had always been the defense. The shooting was not in question, the passing was not in question, but her ability to stay in front of quicker guards, to compete physically on the defensive end against professional players who had been doing this for years. That was the point that skeptics kept returning to. Marina Mabrey, Chicago's leading scorer, tried to use a Camila Cardoso screen to shake free for an open three. Most players in Clark's situation would slide under the screen to avoid contact, give Mabrey a measure of space, try to recover. Clark chose differently. She fought over the screen, shoulder brushing through the contact, staying physically attached to the play, refusing to give up the position. Mabrey rose for what looked like an open three. Clark's timing was perfect. She blocked it. Not a graze or a deflection, a clean, confident swat that sent the ball loose. She grabbed it immediately, pivoted from defense to offense without pause, and found Aaliyah Boston on the pick and roll with a pocket pass threaded through traffic. Boston finished at the rim, defense into offense in one continuous motion. Statement made without any additional commentary required. The shot. Closing minutes. The Fever ahead but the Sky pressing. Tight game, the temperature in the building elevated by everything that had happened over the preceding 40 minutes of basketball. Clark curled off a screen from Boston, drifting beyond the arc to a position slightly deeper than most players would elect to shoot from in a high-pressure moment late in a close game. One gather, no hesitation. She pulled up from deep, the high, confident arc, the specific trajectory of her release that makes the shot look different from most players' shots before it has completed its path. For a split second, everything slowed. She held her follow-through, eyes locked on the rim. The ball traced its arc across the arena. It dropped through the net with that sharp snap, the net sound that means clean contact, no rim involvement, the shot that went exactly where it was released to go. Clark turned immediately. Her reaction was not controlled or measured. She let out a roar toward the crowd, a release of competitive energy that met the crowd's explosion, and the two sounds merged. The bench was on its feet. Teammates celebrated around her. The lead was 84-77, and the game was effectively decided in that moment. It was not just a three-pointer. In the context of what had preceded it, the flagrant foul, the free throws, the 9 points in 5 minutes, the defensive block. The shot became the closing punctuation of an argument that had been building all game. That when the pressure reaches its highest point and the moment matters most, Clark wants the ball and Clark makes the shot. Final buzzer, what the number said. The final score was 91-83, Indiana's second consecutive victory over Chicago and their first back-to-back wins of the season. But the scoreline understated what Clark had produced. 23 points, 9 assists, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks. A stat line spread across every column, contribution in every dimension of the game. Historically, no rookie in WNBA history had posted those numbers in a single game. The combination placed her in elite company immediately, not just among first-year players, but in the broader record of what the league had seen from any player in any season. Angel Reese's post-game comments were direct. She questioned the officiating, disagreed publicly with the flagrant classification, and made it clear she was not offering an apology for her approach to the game. "I can't control the refs," she said. "They affected the game obviously a lot tonight." She was standing firmly on her position and inviting everyone watching to have theirs. Critics argued her play crossed the line and detracted from the integrity of the competition. Supporters argued she was a fierce competitor, unwilling to soften her edge for the comfort of the narrative being built around her opponent. The fan base split exactly in half, and the media leaned into the division with the appetite that only genuine controversy produces. The rematch. The second meeting between the Fever and the Sky arrived with ticket prices at record levels for a regular season WNBA game. The buzz was louder than the first meeting because the first meeting had given the rivalry its defining visual moment. Everyone who attended or tuned in understood they were watching something with established stakes and an unresolved tension. Clark opened with a step-back three, setting the tone before anyone had settled into their seats. Later, off a pass from Tiffany Mitchell, she launched a deep three from way outside, the specific range that makes her impossible to guard with conventional defensive positioning. She found Alana Smith cutting for an easy layup, sharp baseline pass to Courtney Wallace. The Boston-Clark connection continued to produce throughout the fourth quarter. Multiple deep threes, the Fever building a 12-point lead that looked decisive. Then Chicago came back, 82-82, then 84-84. The game arrived at its final possession with the outcome genuinely unresolved. Angel Reese slipped inside on the final possession. Go-ahead layup. The Sky won 88-87. Clark finished with 17 points and 13 assists. 7 of those assists to Boston, who added 18 herself. The loss was real and it stung. But the architecture of what Clark had produced across both meetings, the flagrant foul game and the rematch, had established something that the final score of one game could not diminish. What the whole thing means. Zoom out from the individual moments. The arm, the free throws, the 9 points in 5 minutes. The block, the three-pointer, the roar toward the crowd. And the picture that emerges is the clearest account of what this rivalry actually is. It is not simply two talented players competing hard in a sport that deserves more attention. It is a cultural event that has taken on dimensions well beyond basketball. The charter flight debate, Clark's exclusion from the Olympic team, the conversation about who generates attention for the league and who benefits from that attention, and how that equation is understood by different communities. Every game these two play together produces not just a basketball result, but a new batch of material for that broader conversation to metabolize. The WNBA's visibility has expanded dramatically in the years Clark and Reese have been in the league. Their matchups trend on social media before tip-off and continue trending for days after the final buzzer. Television ratings for their games outperform any comparable regular season women's basketball broadcast of the previous generation. The league that existed before their arrival was genuinely, measurably different in terms of commercial footprint and cultural presence. But the tension that the rivalry carries, the tension that the flagrant foul moment produced in concentrated form, is the tension between the basketball story and everything that surrounds it, between what happens on the court and what the court has been turned into by the time it reaches the broader public, between a clean competitive narrative and the messier reality of two public figures whose every interaction is processed through the most polarized discourse the women's game has ever generated. What was the swing? Accident? Frustration? Message? The answer probably contains elements of all three, and the inability to cleanly separate them is exactly what makes the moment so difficult to simply move past. It exists in the same ambiguous territory that the entire rivalry exists in. Real competition between genuinely talented players, wrapped in a cultural conversation that neither of them fully controls, and that neither of them is entirely innocent of having contributed to. What is not ambiguous is what Clark did with the moment. Free throws made, 9 points in 5 minutes. Defensive block into transition offense. Deep three in the closing minutes with the game on the line. The roar toward the crowd when it dropped. That sequence is on record. The scoreboard confirmed it, and the historical stat line confirmed it. It started with a swing. It became one of the defining nights of the WNBA's most consequential rivalry. And something tells you that neither player, and neither fan base, and neither camp in the argument about what it all means is anywhere close to finished. The story is far from over,